Good morning. Anyway, good to see you here. And as you probably know better than everybody else, the main trouble of deep tech scientists, people engaged in deep science and deep tech, is money. But there is a lot of money available for deep tech activities in Europe and also in other places. And this is what we shall try to look into in the next few minutes. UCRF was founded back in 1982 as a spin-off of University of the International School of Business Sciences in London. But 20 years later, we thought that the then British scientific, innovative ecosystems was not really good enough. So we moved to the Mecca of innovation, to Israel. And it enabled us to materialize potential that were no longer, before we could not really materialize. Connection with the US academic and funding sources, production centers like in China, that all these things were not available in London, but they were available in Israel because Israel was very much into the innovation. So we started to work in London and then later on in Israel as, let's call it, enablers of innovation. And we developed really three main lines of activities. One is looking and encouraging and helping organizations in developing internationally funded projects. There's a lot of money waiting to be invested in innovative ideas. Private money is available, yes, but private money has the trouble of taking equity from entrepreneurs. Public money encourages, and it's more pure in the sense of encouraging the development of new science, new technologies, translational science. And this was something that we thought was really the key for developing deep tech or any really technological advancement. So we started to look into that and work with organizations on internationally funded projects. We, as spin-off of university, we came really from science, but more than subject matter scientists, we were scientific methodologists. And particularly in R&D projects, methodology seems to be a key in order to be able to generate something that will attract funding. So we concentrated on methodology. And of course, the last thing, being academics, we were interested in helping universities and research organizations to becoming better engaged in international collaboration, in international funded projects, and in building R&D strategy. So we started to work with universities as well and research institutions. That meant that, in fact, we are aiming at working with entrepreneurs, with industries, and with academics. And identified several areas where you have money available for such things. First of all, let's talk about European funding. European funding, for example, Horizon Europe, and before that the framework programs, the Horizon programs, are huge. Probably they are the largest funding organizations and funding sources in the world. There are some others, but the European seems to be the largest, the more versatile, the more able to help various, sometimes extreme type of thinking that wants to be developed into the market. So we have thematic programs. Thematic programs, for example, Horizon Europe. Every couple of years, there is a work program published with topics that the Commission wants to be developed and avail money for that. And there you will find in the various work programs hundreds and hundreds of topics that might be suitable to you, suitable for you to work on, to develop your own project, your own idea, and to do it with public money. Normally, the funding rate is really amazing. It's 100% plus 25% overhead, automatic overhead. So that means that you can really work your project. There are more industrial-oriented projects, innovation action, where you get 70% plus 25% overhead. So that means that you're still in quite a good shape, almost 90% of coverage of all your expenditures on the research, on the R&D. You have, as I said, non-European funding opportunities. In the US, you have in health, for example, or in agriculture, or in space, you have quite a few US sources. They would require mostly some sort of collaboration with American organizations. Could be universities, could be companies. But these are things. There are, of course, some, for example, the Australian research funding sources. You have some money in India, in China. All require some sort of collaboration with the local entities. And of course, if you're coming from the academia, there's quite a lot of money for academia. And lastly, there is UN money. UN money is probably next to the European money is the best in the sense that it is really available to all. There are quite a few funds that run by the UN, UNDP. You have the Labor Organization project. You have, of course, the World Bank project, which is not UN, but it's international. You have IMF, International Monetary Fund, and so on and so forth. And one thing that needs to be remembered, that most of these projects require that you will work in a consortium, which means you will create international collaboration. In Europe, it would require that you'll have at least 3, but you'll never, 3 is not really enough, 2 partners from 3 or more countries. within Europe or associated countries like Turkey, Norway, Switzerland is not really, Iceland, and so forth. Now the UK. And you need to create really international work program to work together in consortium. Now the procedure is fairly simple. You have to define what you want to do, and then you have to match it to the work program, to the topics in the work program. You have to find the correct topic in order to be able to match your idea into what the European or the other funding authority wants. You have to look then for, of course, there are in each work program there are several submission dates, so you have to be careful not to miss them, and you have to take enough time to really prepare for that. You then have to find the proper consortium, to have to build the consortium. The consortium should really reflect actual need that would help to materialize the project that you plan. And then, of course, you submit your application and hopefully get the funding. If you're not getting the funding, you could always resubmit in the next submission. The idea is that you work on creating the project. The very fact that you collaborate puts you in a different level of a relationship, working relationship with the world, the subject matter world in which you are planning to develop your project. Because even if you didn't succeed in this time, you have created already a network with which you could work on further development, and then, of course, resubmit and recreate your projects. You have to remember there are lists here of some points that you have to remember. Your project needs to be really scientifically and technologically something that creates an impact, comes from excellence, create an impact. Impact at times for public money is more important than the excellence, because they give you public money, they want the public to enjoy the result of the project. So it is important. You have to always make sure that your consortium is well balanced, politically, geographically, professionally. You have universities and industries, you have SMEs, and you have large corporations, you have startups, and so on and so forth. And of course, the budget should fit the allocated budget that the source will give you. For example, in most of the projects of Horizon Europe, the budget will be around 3 to 4 million per project for 3 years or something like this. That would mean that you have to plan a project with, say, 100 person months per million. That will be the ratio. And that will mean that for 3 or 4 million euro project, you'll need to have maybe 6, 7 partners, sometimes a little bit more. They're not getting the money equally. They're getting the money according to what they do and according to the level of salaries in their countries. So, for example, German partners were salaries are higher will probably be funded higher than Latvian one, where their salary is lower than compared to Germany, and something like this. So you have to remember this type of thing. And before, if you have a question, before that, I want to mention one more thing. There are, particularly in Europe, there are dedicated programs for SMEs and startups, where you don't have to have partners. You can have your own ideas, your own project, and you could also request investment of up to 15 million euro to match the project, the funding. And these are things that are more cumbersome to fill out, the applications, but there are sometimes that they are very, very suitable for you if you have a very special idea that does not fit with any of the work program topics. So this is one thing. Second thing, many times you'll think, well, it's too complicated to go for a project. Let's try to get for private investment. Statistically, the chance to get private investment and the chance to get public money funding is exactly the same, around 10%. So you have to remember that. And since we, at least we have been working mainly with public money, I can assure you that compared with investing your time and energy and also a little bit of financial effort to create an application that will go to private funding, the same work, the same investment, the same effort that goes for public money funding seems to be much more efficient. And as I said, of course, it will save you parting away from your equity. Plus, particularly European funding, but also in other funding sources, there is a very serious concern of the funding authorities that so that your IP is retained and protected. And this is another thing that is very, very important for you as entrepreneur, as deep tech scientist, as someone who wants to develop projects. And if you have any questions, first of all, you could always refer to me and approach me, and I'll be more than happy to have your questions and answer them. And one more thing. If you go to UCRF's website, you will see that we have an entirely free service for the public of the scientists. If you have an idea, we'll be able to assess it and to see whether this idea is a fundable idea or not. And you'll get to respond in a couple of days, or 3-4 days. And this is entirely free as a public service. Thank you very much.
Thank you.